Okay, I was going to put my camera on, but I think I'll avoid those online having to see my arms flail around and just those in the room. So I guess, yes, just to kind of mention that this is the West Mids Group, I guess, first hybrid meeting. So we're experimenting with technology. So hopefully if this works well, there'll be a model you can take forward to the future events. Okay, I just lost my presenter view. Right. So good evening, everybody. My name is Verity Wade-Smith, and I'm a Principal Geotechnical Engineer in the Civils Asset Management team in Mott MacDonald. Yeah, thank you to the committee this evening for hosting my presentation. And I'm going to present to you on National Highways geotechnical data improvements and focusing on the better use of AGS data. So just a summary of the presentation, I think it should be around about 30 minutes. So we'll take questions at the end. So yeah, just bear with me. There are lots of interesting things to tell you about. So I'll give you a very quick overview of National Highways. We do actually have several representatives of National Highways in the room, so I don't need to introduce themselves. But for those online, might not be familiar with everything that they do. I'm going to just give you an overview of National Highways Geotechnical and Drainage Management Service, so GDMS. This is where, to give you information on the storage and retrieval of granite investigation, including reports and AGS data, and also a bit of an overview of the system itself and the current data held within it. And of course, I'm actually going to cover what is AGS. There may be some people on the line that aren't particularly familiar with that, and just show you some of the benefits and what it actually brings to the industry. Then focusing on the task that we've been working on behalf of National Highways for the past 2 years. So the reasons on the task, why we're doing it and what we've achieved so far. And then just touch on the outcomes, how we're facilitating improved data quality and access for National Highways and their supply chain. And also touch on some of the guidance notes and documents that will be published as part of this task and will be available to those who produce AGS data on behalf of National Highways, but also we'd like to see potentially adopting across the industry. So who are National Highways? So National Highways are responsible for the management and maintenance of just over 4,000 miles. I think there's around 7,000-ish kilometres. Miles of kilometres of motorways and major roads in England. So despite carrying like a significant proportion of the traffic, it's only, I think, results in about 2% of the national road network. So it really is part of the critical national infrastructure. And obviously at the heart of all this, National Highways, with their maintenance and management of the data and the assets, is all about limiting disruption to journey time delays to the road users. So just to so you can see some statistics there about the lengths of carriageways, but just of an interest to many of those on the call. And there's actually around 50,000 geotechnical assets maintained by National Highways. So a bit of a background of the Geotechnical and Drainage Management Service. So kind of going back a few years now to National Highways Agency, as they were at the time, were actually quite pioneers in geotechnical asset management in the late 90s, early 2000s. They really recognised the value and importance of not only just managing the physical data, but the associated data with it. So with this became the development of their first geotechnical and data management system, which was HAGDMS. There's also a parallel HADDMS with the drainage data that came a little bit later on. So development began in 2000 and it was been operating since around 2002. So it has around 20 years of geotechnical asset inspection data, as well as a host of other information as well. So it also holds historical reports, AGS data, and has a user-friendly interface to bring together all the information that you could possibly need, also from anything relevant to third parties, all geospatially held in and within separate module databases within the system. So this is actually accessible to all National Highway staff, their supply chain with approval. And so this would include designers, inspectors, data managers, GI contractors, and any other interested party who is where National Highways are a stakeholder. So at the moment there is only, as I said, the historical system, but what we've released is the new version of GDMS. So at the moment that just contains the geotechnical data, and that was rolled out last year. We're in development about migrating the data from the old HADDMS into GDMS, and we're expecting all that data to be migrated in around 2024. At the moment there is over 1,000 users that access this information and use it, and ultimately National Highways are aiming for a single source of truth for the geotechnical and drainage assets and all the information you could possibly need to help manage and maintain those. So here's a little visual for those that aren't familiar with the system. So it is an online GIS interface. As I've said, I can't remember, nearly 100 different mapping layers, different layers available of data that can be turned on and off to your desire. Just to visualize that in there, that we do bring in data sources from third parties such as BGS. So this is hosted by WMS, so it is again that single source of truth from the source, but represented within the GDMS system. There's also a series of National Highways specific data that's displayed on the map interface. So for example, there you can see the little dots on the map. For those in the room, you can see my arm. For those online, I have to imagine my arm pointing at the little dots on the map. So these are the exploratory locations. So I said this also helps you understand, if you look, it's not very clear on this, but those little dots are either red or green, and the green dots are where AGS data is held for that specific location in the system. So alongside our wonderful map interface, as I said, there's also a significant number of other data sources available in the system. One of those being report database. So we have over 20,000 geotechnical reports are recorded in the system, and actually 17,000 of those we actually have the PDF available to view and download. This includes a range of different report types, from PSSRs, factual reports, GDRs. There's also lots of monitoring, feedback reports, and some as-built information in there as well. So just to note, you can see from that, there's an example, there's nearly 4,000 factual reports recorded on GDMS. As well as the factual information, factual reports, so physical PDFs that are available, then National Highways host what are called exploratory locations. So these are the kind of pinpoint locations of where ground investigation has been carried out. So there's actually a record of over 100,000 exploratory locations. So not all of these are associated with AGS data specifically, but there are over 900 AGS files available in GDMS associated with the factual reports. Whilst you might think that, great, 900 files is quite significant, really good, it actually only represents less than 20% of all the factual reports in the system. So that's obviously something that's recognised, and the value of this data is also recognised, which is really the root of why we've been doing this task, to try and improve the data that's available to users, the access to it, but also look at the quality of what's available in the system. So that's kind of what National Highways, how they host their information. But just going back one step to what actually is AGS data, which is the focus of the task, and been a large focus of what we've been wanting to improve access to the supply chain to. So AGS is the Association of Geotechnical and Geoenvironmental Specialists. So I have basically cribbed this text from the AGS website, so I'm declaring it now and providing a link to more information. But ultimately, AGS, we call it AGS data, but it's a text file, a .ags text file. And this format's used to transfer data reliably between organisations in a common format across the site investigation industry. It's kind of independent of software and hardware or operating system. And it provides that standard structured way to transfer data, ground investigation data, lab testing and monitoring between different parties at different times and making it accessible to anyone that has viewing capabilities or use that data, feed it into other systems. So largely AGS is generated initially by the ground investigation contractor, either from the laboratory or on-site drilling crew and technicians, and then it should be fed through to all of the parties as part of the project. So it's quite often used for design, and by having this in the structured format for data transfer means that there isn't expensive or errors that incur with double handling of data. And the really ease of this is that the data can be easily archived and retrieved later, which is why it's so important and such a drive of National Highways to hold this data within GDMS. So I said, ultimately, National Highways, the benefits and the use of the AGS data is to make it more available. So in its current format, there's a little example here of a borehole. So this borehole log would actually be produced directly from AGS data. So it's the way it's captured. And it can be displayed in the formats based on templates. So not only subsequently, it can also be used and fed into ground models to help develop 3D modeling and understand the correlations across sites, but also support parameter derivation. So there's templates that are available to bring together parameters so you can view those across schemes and projects. It's also used a lot in research. So for example, obviously it's been used by ourselves for this project on behalf of National Highways, but it's also used by others, also in academia, and it's all of the data is also shared with the BGS. So really, what is the drivers behind this project and where we would see it being AGS the future? So the point is that we want to make sure that more of the above happens, that AGS is used, existing AGS is picked up and used at the start of every project. By using the data and part of this project, we've been looking at trying to correlate data better across files to make it more usable and make it more valuable. With that becomes the potential to bring together information from across sites and correlate them to be able to provide a geotechnical properties compendium. So I will be demonstrating what we've been able to achieve as part of this task in the next few slides. But really, kind of the better AGS you have, the more quality you have. It could all feed into providing and producing more intelligent way of checking properties. There's a bit of a circular process of improving what goes in and validating what's coming out of our analyses. But ultimately, really, having better data, having better access and better quality data will reduce the effort, cost and time to go into collecting more data, particularly at locations where it might already exist. There's probably nothing more wasteful than GI contractors going out to a site where a GI took place 10 years ago and no one knows where the data is, but someone remembers they were here before. So having that access to that data means that those GIs can be more effective. They can target areas where there isn't any information, can also help accelerate the design process. And really thinking about this in a holistic terms, it really does have a strong health sustainability, as well as the health and safety benefits of having less people on the network exposed to risks from the operational environment. So what does National Highways actually have in their database at the moment? So as I said, AGS data has been collected or has been stored in the system since it existed in 2002. So we've got 20 years of AGS data. As I said, there's around 900 files. With that, obviously, there's been different formats of AGS data that's been produced over that time, where all of those formats can be held within the system. But something that is recognised is the variability of the data quality. So trying to bring that quality together in terms of what exists in the system to make better use of it, but also set in place the steps, the processes and the guidance to improve all the new data subsequently being uploaded into GDMS in the future. So that's a bit of background I said about AGS, but where does the task that we've been working on fit within the grand scale of things? So National Highways have obviously got a keen interest in their building a resilient asset base. So there's been a large investment over the past few years called, or all part of the Climate Change Adaptation Programme. So there's an umbrella, well, there's several projects in terms of building knowledge through research under that umbrella. And a lot of these tasks are all fundamentally relate back to improving data, access to that data, or knowledge that can be gained from the information that already exists. It's all been contributed to through a collaboration of consultants that we can see down in the bottom of the slide. So there's been, as I said, there's been real good collaboration with lots of consultants all coming together regularly to contribute to the knowledge and understanding, and ultimately working towards what's under the Climate Change Adaptation Plan for National Highways. So setting out what National Highways might need to do in future. And particularly around the roadmap for future research and development. So with this, there's been quite a strong engagement with the supply chain, and there is a really important part of this project is to embed the changes, embed the potential improvement processes to the supply chain and improve the future running of the strategic road network. So with this as well, as I said, the one circled there, so the better use of AGS data, is the project that will be presenting to you today. So the better use of AGS data, or its catchy name, task 11072, as we've all become accustomed to calling it. So as I said, this is really focused around geotechnical data improvement and AGS data. So ourselves as Mott MacDonald have been working on this since 2020. It's due to complete towards the end of this year, but with the potential that we may be extending it, I should say may, because the clients in the room, if I smile nicely, will be extending it to allow us to continue to improve the data that's in the system. So the project itself actually included 16 subtasks. I haven't got all night to tell you in great detail about all of them, but I've decided to focus on 6 of the main ones. So one of the most important things that we did, and the first topic that we'll talk through in a minute, is about understanding the quality of existing data, quantifying what exists and its content and how useful that is in its current format, but also examining its potential value and use to National Highways and the supply chain. The second one is what could we do to, as I said, we first identify the potential, but actually we've been able to improve some of the data that's within GDMS. So understanding what can be improved, improving it, but also setting the scene to continue that quality improvement into the future. What we've also produced and what we've been able to do by having this common process, this common terminology, which I'll sort of giving away the secrets already, but I'll focus on the geotechnical parameter compendium that we've been able to produce. Implementing, as I said, a really in part this is about, we can come up with these recommendations, but getting buy-in and implementing it into the future AGS submissions is a really important part of this task. Another important part, as I said, is that we actually only currently have less than 20% of factual reports. So there is a call out for AGS amnesty for anyone that finds any files lurking around in the systems. Please provide those to National Highways to help complete their database. And as I said, all about engagement and promoting the adoption of AGS as a primary deliverable from GI, but making sure that that subsequently is uploaded onto GDMS, and so that everybody can understand the value of it, which in part is why I'm presenting to you all and begging you on this call today. So the first item that I said I'd focus on was about understanding the quality of the AGS data that National Highways hold. So as I said, there's around 900 files, and each of those files has been scored. I don't know if you can see this too well, but basically the score, the files can have a maximum score of 5, and the score was based on whether or not there was coordinates available within, or whether those coordinates were likely to be correct, or whether they're kind of local grid and therefore not much use to generalized use. But really not if you don't know where those holes are, their content is pretty much not very helpful. So understanding if there's coordinates available, but actually we took one step further and looked to see whether or not where there wasn't, or where the coordinates didn't look sensible or weren't available, we actually went and examined the factual report to see whether we could establish the locations from that report. In addition to that, what we needed to understand was whether or not there was any geological information in this. So kind of going back one step, one of the root benefits of this is actually having that consistent geological codification across these files that make them more useful and applicable to grouping together information from across those files. So does it actually have a geol table in the first place? Are we going to have some geological information in there that's of use? Whether or not there's any geological codes, so what is known as geol codes, whether there's any of those in the data. Whether or not it has any what the headers called geol BGS codes. So there were actually some files that had this, and ultimately that's the field that I'll explain. That's the field that we're looking to bring together and to be able to utilize data across files from using this field. So it wasn't just about seeing whether or not, as I said, it was all about understanding its current quality, but also its potential quality. So whether or not there was any information in the description or in the other fields within the file, within that materials, that would actually help us establish what that geol BGS code was. So out of this, as I said, we were able to score all of those files, but also understand its potential, which means we can actually quantify the improvement that this task could have. So as I said, the two main, well, the first element that we saw as the biggest benefit to the project was to identify or if there was any potential to improve the coordinates. As it happened, from a very small number of files, we actually established that we could correct the coordinates for over 1,300 boreholes. So that was 1,300 extra point locations of data that we could establish by correcting the coordinate. Some of those were particularly for large schemes where a local grid had been used, and we're able to establish the conversion of that local grid and therefore turn it into national grid coordinates and make it plot visually represented in the correct place. The second item on there, as I said, the focus around this project was really about the potential for geol BGS information. So this was going to give us a field that we could correlate materials across files with. So where those ones didn't have geol BGS, which there was only a handful that did, but there was a number of files, so almost 300 files had the potential to be able to populate the geol BGS code. Maybe not for every material encountered, but for a number of locations or materials within that file. So something that we also did as well as part of that assessment was understand whether or not there was any lab test data in that. So obviously thinking ahead to our properties database, it was whether or not there was anything useful, any additional beneficial information held within that file that again would give that increase in quality. So after we established the quality of the data, the amount and quality of the data, What we really needed to do, as I said, what we wanted to focus on was the consistent and standardized codification of the stratigraphical units in each of the files. So the decision that the best thing to do about this was to use the BGS lexicon, because that would then enable, as I said, materials of the same type in different locations across different ground investigations to be brought together in that simple manner. So the intention was to, so the prioritization was to improve locations, but then it was looking at the potential to add those JOL BGS codes into that data, but also considering where this data would be of most immediate value to national highways and supply chain. It's definitely more important to focus on upcoming schemes as opposed to ones in areas of the network that perhaps it wasn't going to add most instant value to national highways. So modification of the AGS files, I say really augmentation of those files. So it was prioritization of those to be looked at. The intention was to create a new version of that file by coordinating the coordinates where possible and adding the BGS codification where it could be. The important part about this was actually making this data available back into the GDMS system, but we wanted people to understand that that data had been edited or added as part of this project, so that people can understand that, you know, it's there to support and inform and not be there as a definitive, you should use this. There should always be an engineering element, engineering judgment applied to everything that would be picked up. So the metadata associated with this within the file itself and within the record in GDMS is identified quite clearly as augmented. And as I said, those files that we've improved have actually, many of them, you can see there, we're still working through the process of uploading them, but there are already a number of those improved files available to download on GDMS. We've not touched any of the existing information because obviously that was the data that was captured at the time. That's the data that's been added to the system. So that's all been maintained in the system, but we have updated the metadata associated with those files to signpost anybody that picks it up to the fact that there is another file available for that ground investigation, but with potentially improved information. So what can we do with all this? Obviously, the value of this to bring in ground models is one thing, but a significant change and a significant development that we can do and have done for this project is actually produce a geotechnical properties compendium. So as I said, because we've got that consistent codification across files, we can bring together test data for those geologies. So as it stands at the moment, we have we've added all of the improved files. We've fed it into our database, and we've produced around 19,000 rows of data. The beauty of this is that not only can you filter it then by BGS lexicon or geology, you can actually define the extents of the, so if you've got regional variations, they can be defined by setting your site with some coordinates. So what it then does is that it will, if you've done that, it will tell you, it will give you a summary. There's a summary table there on the top right. So these are just literally the raw results that are coming out of the AGS files. What you can do from the top summary, I should use my arm again for those in the room. And what you can do is understand the number of files that data has come from, but actually the number of test results as well. Just so it helps you give that understanding and that appreciation of, you know, whether or not there's only a small data set that's giving you this, or if you've got a large data set. So rather ominously, there's 666 test results for Chalmers Mudstone. And then what you can also do in the bottom part of the compendium is actually you can choose your property, and we've got some nice graphs to help display the information, and again just give you that overview and that idea of the variation. So something that, you know, is really important with this is just a summary of the factual data. Everything is expected and anticipated to go back. It would be reviewed as part of the design process and not just taken as an ultimate result what we've been able to do in from that is trying to pinpoint and signpost users back to the original source. So as part of the compendium, it also gives you a list of the reports that data has been come from, as well as I think it actually summarise all the test results as well, which then could be used to then create whatever plots were defined by the user. So this, as it stands, as I said, is a work in progress, but ultimately the aim is to make this available to the supply chain. So as I've said, and I've repeatedly said, that really this project, its success will be is how we can change the future, how we can improve and the recommendations that we've learned and developed as part of a review of the quality and where this task could go, making sure that that's implemented going forward. So we've produced a series of guidance notes. So this one specifically covers the guidance around the geological codification and the assignment and use of those BGS codes. We have also considered, we had looked at Uniclass 2015 codes as part of this, but that's kind of on the back burner for now, but we've got an appreciation and a consideration of that in future. So I guess just a bit of a summary of what that guidance note says in terms of geological codification. So obviously we're not intending that anything should really change that gets populated in the description, but the GEOL legend code should be populated. I think all of this is pretty much as it is. So a lot of companies or projects might have their own specific geology codes, which would quite often be populated within the GEOL Geo2 field at the discretion of the data producer. But what we're recommending, or strongly recommending, is that the BGS lexicon code should be identified and populated within the GEOL BGS field. And as the intention is that these codes will be they can be obtained through the BGS website. I mean, also the information is within GDMS itself, and the recommendation is that the code as it would appear on the 1 to 50,000 scale map should be used as a minimum. So this is just a bit of a view of how you would establish where this information, this is a screenshot from GDMS. So just showing you that the information is available via the WMS 1 to 50,000.
I know that site.
Yeah. No, you definitely. Oh yes, no, I do as well. I didn't take that screenshot, but I know exactly where it is now. So as I said, taking that Lex code from the relevant geology that would be directly underlying the site, or well, not directly underlying the site. Obviously, if you're at depth, you should be thinking about the geology that's there beneath, not just what's at the surface. And as I said, the full detail of the BGS lexicon can actually be found on the BGS website as well, which can quite often help, or we have used quite relentlessly whilst doing this project, particularly where we're looking at GI data from many years ago with very many obsolete codes that we've been converting into their current format. So a big part of this task is to try and also obtain more AGS data. So a particular client who may also be in the room has done a great job in getting lots of extra AGS data from historical jobs. He's not allowed to turn up to a meeting unless he's uploaded another one to GDMS. But obviously, as I said, if you have got any, please upload them to GDMS. There must be many more files out there, even either the data that's come from a GI contractor specifically, or even those that have been used and updated by a designer as part of projects. All of those can be held in GDMS and potentially help, as I said, improve the access, improve the number of files that are available. If you do require any assistance determining whether or not those files are already on GDMS or any support with uploading, then just drop an email to the support@HAGDMS email address, and that will probably filter through to me to support you in that anyway. So coming on to the last slide, this is really about what's next, what's the future. So as I said, for the task, we've currently done around a third of those files, and our intention and National Highways' intention is obviously that there's potential there to improve them, then they should be improved for the benefit of everybody. So the continuation of uploading those improved files to GDMS will continue over the next few months. The intention is to make the parameter compendium available. It will really only be, ultimately, we would have obviously ambitions and dreams that that would be fully embedded into the system, and that when you uploaded an AGS file with your BGS codes already populated, the compendium would magically update. But I think we're a few years away from that yet. But we can dream, we can add it to the wish list. But as I said, so it will be a moment in time, and it would need to be refreshed as and when any more AGS data with BGS codes in it would become available. Obviously the publication of this work, so we've presented it to the National Highways GI community. I'm presenting it to you all now. We're also presenting it at the AGS Geotechnical Data Conference. So if anybody wants to listen to this presentation again and more things about the AGS, I'll be presenting it at that conference in Birmingham in December. And that's all I have to say on that right now. So thank you very much, everybody, for your time. I don't know who's facilitating questions.
Thank you very much. We have any questions in the chat, so if anybody has any questions, participants, then please speak up. Or anyone in the room.
No, that's talking.
Well, news to you too, so you can ask or take the questions another time.
I've got one. What's the position with the reliance on data supplied by others in supply chain?
How do you rely?
So normally a business wouldn't be comfortable with using data supplied by others that they've not had a hand in obtaining, designing the GI for, and so on. And so it won't put so much reliance on it. I just wondered how things work in that respect.
So I guess it's like any other data source. So it's part of your desk study, it's part of your bigger picture. And the anticipation, like with anything, is that it would then be taken and interpreted correctly and as appropriately by sufficiently trained individuals in that, using that data. So we wouldn't be expecting people, or it would come with caveats. And I think
it's really up to the client to look at it themselves and consider its value for themselves, consider if it's relevant and how much weight they want to give on it.
Yeah.
To it, how much they want to rely on it.
Whether it's used for information or actually combined in the data set.
Yeah, I don't think anyone would want to, base the significant part of the project on it. They want to validate it in their own way, quite likely with their own supplementary GI. But as time goes on, the more AGS data we've got, the less we need to rely on traditional GI, and the more we can rely on the growing AGS repository.
Question on the chat from John Madison. Have approaches been made direct to GI contractors for AGS data related to work undertaken for national roads?
yes. So as part of the GI community events, so those that are involved in they're on National Highways GI frameworks, have annual community, so wider than, so they attend. We presented, in fact, very recently at that event. I think actually we've done that a couple of times now.
Yeah. And we've had a couple of campaigns on LinkedIn, and it's probably about time for another one as well.
That's true. Yeah, we have done LinkedIn campaigns.
The AGS amnesty, so
Yeah,
it's probably time to give that another push. I think I'll try and do that in
and
the next few weeks.
there's always the any users of GDMS also get a kind of 3 times a year, quarterly newsletter.
Yeah.
So it's also included regularly in that newsletter. But that obviously only goes to those people that already have access
Yeah.
to the system.
Thank you. A question from Fiona ED. Is the database hosted on a cloud platform and can non-highway inland projects access data?
So all the data as it is held on GDMS for the purposes of the of National Highways supply chain.
So it is a cloud platform, but it's for national highway projects.
But I think with this, obviously, we want to influence industry in improving the way that this is done. So if we can promote as many people as possible populating Joel BGS, then it could have a huge impact across industries.
The other type of project we do provide access to GDMS stories, projects that have potential to impact on the road network. So, quite a few third-party projects are encouraged to use the data that's on GDMS. So developers that are nearby local roads that interact with the strategic road network.
Large railway projects.
Large railway projects, of course. Network Rail use it.
Yeah.
Where they've got infrastructure close to us, as do other asset owners like the energy sector and others as well.
Yeah.
And the BGS crawl
And the BGS, yeah. So people are probably aware of the push that the BGS have given recently for AGS data through their geospatial
Big
playbook.
Oh, don't know the
The
playbook.
playbook. So that's published in the last couple of weeks, and that has a commitment for all. It is guidance, but it's got a commitment for all government projects to contribute their AGS data to the BGS repository. Whereas on national highways projects, we've got a memorandum of understanding with BGS where they effectively come in and harvest the AGS data when they wish.
I think the intention is to try and speak, well, at least give that wider awareness of the project and the benefits of our BGS, because they will probably want to.
And the BGS are aware of what we're doing, and they're quite encouraged by what they've seen so far. So as the project reaches its closing stages, I'm sure we'll be back in contact with them and give a sort of coordinated push for better AGS within the industry.
Yeah, and I guess National Highways is at the table with the Geotechnical Asset Owners Forum as well. So I can't remember when you presented this project in that space yet.
I think you are.
Oh.
A week or two. Chris is presenting that
Okay.
one. So that might be a different presentation. We'll see.
It'll be this one. Yeah, so we are, we're in there with,
that's
communicating
19th,
that.
isn't it?
yeah, I think Chris is doing that one.
Yeah.
A question from John Barker. Has there been any progress on obtaining or compiling pile testing data in AGS pile testing data format and a timeline when it might start to be available?
I mean, that's a different project. That's not a National Highways project, that's an AGS project. It is gathering momentum. I couldn't really comment on specifics on that. The AGS data working group would be the ones to update the industry on that, I think.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you.
Sorry about that, John.
Any further questions?
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Verity.
Yes, thank you very much. And next month we have Dr. Antonio Ferreira from British Geological Survey to present to us on new updates to radon mapping. So it should be quite interesting. Thanks all, and see you next time.
And upload your AGS data.
Yeah.